Okay, and welcome back to Mr. B's math class. Today we're looking at 8.5, applying integer operations. Our student outcome for today is I can apply the order of operations, which is, as we know, a BEDMAS, to solve integer problems. Just as a review, BEDMAS is what we saw in our last unit when we were looking at fractions, but we're going to look at it again here. And that always means that when you're doing a problem, you're going to look first for brackets. Then you're going to look for exponents, then division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. It just tells you the order that you're going to need to solve the problem and to help you get the right answer. So let's take a look at our first example. Alright, so let's try our first example here. So we've got a negative 15 being divided by a negative 3, subtracting a positive 4, multiplying a minus 2. Now I know off the bat that seems like a lot and it looks like it's going to be confusing, but really it's not. If you just follow the step 1 right here, applying the order of operations or your BEDMAS, you're going to be just fine. Now one thing I do want to say before we even start out is that these here, this brackets around the negative 15, negative 3, and so on, are not really brackets. They're just there so that we know this is a negative 15, this is a negative 3, this is a positive 4, and this is a minus 2. If we didn't have that, we'd have signs that weren't separated. That's the only reason why they're there. So when you're looking at BEDMAS, don't worry about those as your brackets because they're the answer. There's nothing involved here, right? Nothing is being done to the 15 or the 3 or the 4 or the 2. So just ignore those when we're going ahead here. So let's start. We've got our BEDMAS. So, do we have any brackets to work with? No, like I said, don't have to worry about those. Do we have any exponents? No. Do we have any division? Yes. So let's start with our division. We have got to start out with negative 15 being divided by negative 3. Now, I'm going to take the brackets off and just write it as an equation here. So I've got negative 15 being divided by negative 3. So let's work with this first. So, remembering the sign rule, I've got a negative being divided by a negative, which I know will give me a positive, because two signs that are the same, that are multiplied or divided together, will give us a positive. I'm just going to do the work now. So 15 divided by 3 is actually 5, so my answer is plus 5 here. So on this side, I've got final answer of plus 5. Now I'm going to go back to my BEDMAS. So now I'm going to look, do I have any multiplication? Oh, yes I do, right here. So I do. Let's do our multiplication now. So I've got a positive 4 being multiplied by a negative 2. When I apply the sign rule again, positive being multiplied by negative, different signs, whether it's multiplied or divided, are always going to give me a negative. So my answer is going to be a negative, and I've got 4 multiplied by 2, is 8. So my final answer there is negative 8. Now when I bring them all together with this subtraction in the middle, I get positive 5 minus a minus 8. Now this is where things get a tiny bit tricky because we haven't dealt with them before. You can either just look at it and say, okay, I know it's negative 5 minus 8, but that won't work. Because what you got to imagine here for yourself, oops, sorry about that. What you've got to imagine here is that there's actually a little 1 outside here that's being applied to. So that's actually a little mini negative 1. I'm sorry, I'm just going to draw this a little bit better here. It's a little mini negative 1 being applied outside. And whenever we have that, we haven't finished it because now there's actually multiplication to work with. So what I always say is multiply that in. So we've got a negative 1 multiplying a negative 8. According to our sign rule, we've got a negative multiplying a negative, which gives us a positive. So that means our answer is actually going to be, our final part of the question is going to be positive 5 plus 8. All we have to do now is add them together. So positive 5 plus 8 is actually positive 13. Now I understand that might give you some trouble because that's the only hitch. And I'm just going to go over that one more time here. So when we look back here at this negative here, this 5 minus a minus 8, we can't have something like this. We can't have a plus 5 minus a minus 8. That won't work. But what you've got to look at is say, okay, well, right here, what I've got happening are two negatives. A negative here, negative here. And whenever I have two negatives, what's that going to be? A positive. Now, why I say imagine that it's being multiplied, it's just, to me, it makes things easier. So if you imagine here you've got your negative 8, I've got a negative right here on the outside. If I imagine to myself there's actually a little 1 in front of it that's right beside being multiplied, well, if I multiply that into the bracket, I've got a minus times a minus, which will give me a plus. That way, my actual equation reads positive 5 plus 8. I know you haven't seen it before, but just give this a shot in the future and just keep that in mind. It'll keep coming up, so it'll be okay. Alright, this video is already getting pretty long, but let's try the next one here. So, step 1 says apply that order of operations, which is BEDMAS again. So we've got a negative 6 subtracting a negative 9 plus a negative 14 divided by a positive 2. So let's follow our order of operations. So I've got my BEDMAS. Do I have brackets? No. Do I have exponents? No. Do I have division? I sure do. Right here. So let's start with that then. I've got a negative 14 being divided by a positive 2. When I look at my sign rule, negative divided by a positive is always going to give me a negative. So my final answer is going to be a negative. And 14 divided by 2 is 7. Now I've got that taken care of. Now I can look at the next part. What do I have? Do I have multiplication? I don't. Do I have any division? Ah, yes I do. It's happening right here. So I'm going to take my negative 9 and I'm going to add it. Negative 9 plus a minus 7. Now the same thing that happened last time. You're going to imagine this. That bracket's there again. I've got a little 1 outside. Positive 1 being multiplied in there. It's going to give me a negative times, a positive times a negative will give me a negative. So that means that I have negative 7. So minus 9 subtract 7 is not going to be negative 2. Because when you look at it, if I have on my number line a minus 9, subtracting always goes down, right? You're making things smaller. And in this case, 9 is already below 0 because 0 is right here. So I'm subtracting, it's actually moving that way in the number line. So I've got to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And when I look at it, this would be negative 10, negative 11, negative 12, negative 13, negative 14, negative 15, negative 16 is where it would end up. So that means I've actually got a negative 16. Now, I have to look, do I have any more addition? No, I don't. So I just have subtraction left. Now, when I go back up to the top, I'm bringing in my negative 6. And I'm just going to carry this so you guys can see it. I've got negative 6 minus a negative 16. As you guys know from before, when I've got this situation again with the negative in the middle there, I've got to imagine there's a little 1 that I'm going to multiply in. And a negative times a negative is going to give me a positive 16. So negative 6 plus 16. Well, again, we've got to go back to our number line. And I'm just going to carry this over to another page here. 1 second. Negative 6 plus 16. Now that will not equal 22. Why? Well, because when we look at a number line here, and I know you guys know I don't like number lines, but in this case they're actually pretty helpful. We're going to start at negative 6. Okay? Here's 0. What we have to look at is we're adding. when we add, it automatically moves that way on the number line because it's getting bigger. Okay? So when I add 16 to negative 6, I've got to move it 16 times that way. So that was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, which would actually leave me at positive 10, which means my final answer will be positive 10. You could also look at this here as it being 16 minus 6, which would be 10, because this is the bigger number, so it's always going to be subtracting from that. Let's try one on your own. Alright, so now you guys can try this one here. I've got a negative 8 added by negative 2 multiplied by 4 plus negative 1. Please keep in mind these brackets here definitely do count. I've made them different as square brackets so you can see that they're actual brackets and not just separating things like this. So pause it here and give it a shot and play when you're ready. Okay, so let's try this one. Let's look at our bed mass again. Do we have brackets in this question? Yeah, we do. They are right here. So we're going to try that out then. In those brackets, we have got a 4 plus a minus 1. Now, as you guys now know from a couple examples in a row, this little addition there is actually like saying plus 1. We need to multiply that inside, and we're going to get a positive multiplied by a negative. So we're going to get an answer that's negative 1. So here we've got 4 minus 1 is our new question. 4 minus 1, as you guys know, is 3. There, we finished that part of the question now. Now we're looking at it. Do we have any exponents in our question? No, we don't. Any division? No, we don't. Any multiplication? Yes, we do. It is right here. So now we're going to bring this 2 down. We've got negative 2 multiplied by a positive 3, because we know that 4 is positive. Well, sign rule again. Negative multiplied by a positive is always going to give us a negative, because they are different signs. So negative. And 2 times 3 is 6, so our answer there is negative 6. Now we can go back through and look at our bed mass again. Do we have any addition? Yes, we do. We can bring this down now, and here we've got negative 8 plus a negative 6. Well, again, you're going to imagine that there's that little plus 1 here. When we multiply it in, we've got a plus times a negative, which different signs is always going to give us a negative. So it's negative 6. Negative 8 minus 6. We get an answer of negative 14. And again, remember, because this isn't positive, it's not going to move in that positive direction on the number scale. If we've got our number scale here again, we've got negative 8, and this will be 0 there. We're moving negative. Negative means we're moving that way. So we've got to move it 6 times this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When we hop it to 9, to 10, to 11, to 12, 13, 14, we get negative 14. Alright, last one of the day. Let's give you guys can give this one a shot as well. Positive 30 divided by negative 10 plus negative 20 divided by negative 1. So pause it here and then hit play when you're ready. Alright, so we've got our bed mass again. When we look at this, do we have any brackets? No, we don't. Exponents? Nope. Division? Yes, we do. We've actually got 2 sets of division. Here and here. In this question, it doesn't really matter which one we do first, but just to keep things proper, we're going to start on the left. So, when we look at it, we've got a positive 30 being divided by a negative 10. Look at our sign rule. We've got a positive being divided by a negative. Different signs, so we know the answer has got to be negative. Then we do the work. 30 divided by 10 is 3. So we've got a negative 3 there. Then we move on to this side of the equation. We've got a negative 20 being divided by a negative 1. Same thing, sign rule. Negative divided by a negative. Same sign, it's going to be positive. And 20 divided by 1 is just 20. So now all I can do is bring this back into the middle here. So our new question will be negative 3 plus a plus 20. We can do the same thing again like I showed you guys before. Imagine that little 1 here. So plus 1 times plus 20. Well, a plus times a plus. It's the same side, so our answer is going to be plus. And 1 times 20 is 20. So we have negative 3 plus 20. Again, you can do that one of two ways. You can either look at that number line and say, okay, here's negative 3, here's 0, and then add 20 to that, because if you're adding, it always goes that direction, and you could count out 20 from there. Or you could just rewrite it as 20 minus 3, which gives us a plus 17. The same thing would happen down here, because you'd go negative 2, negative 1, 0, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 17. But just, even though I hate these number lines, right? If it's ever being subtracted or minus, you're always moving that way in the number line. If it's ever being added, you're always going that way. So right makes it smaller, left makes it bigger. Just keep this in mind when you're looking at the next part of your work. So good luck.